Racim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu. Jazakallah khairan Hatice for forgiving us and technical difficulties indeed. We had several of them. Okay, let's start inshallah. Last week we studied the 17th flash, 5th note. And inshallah today we will continue with 6th note. So 17th, 1-7, 17th flash, 6th note. So the last week it was about a comparison between, let's say, the Quranic wisdom, Quranic way of seeing life, and then on the contrary, the author was calling it the Western worldview that sees the world. The difference between the two. Last week we couldn't discuss a certain specific part, which is about, maybe we can start from there and then continue with the 6th note, when author describing this Western civilization or non-Quranic worldview, let's say, not to be lost in today's geographical dichotomies. He was saying that in this anti-Quranic worldview, you can imagine it as like he was giving an example, an analogy, a person traveling and seeing everyone being, an enemy of each other, as like being attacked from everywhere, all corpses around, and nobody's helping each other. Everybody's on their, the other's throat. That was the anti-Quranic worldview. And on the contrary, when it comes to Quranic, author was saying that it is all about like when you look at the world from Quran's lens. He was saying, like he said in the 5th note, that you would see nothing but collaboration to people, things, not even people only, things helping each other, living, working in harmony. So maybe we can start from here, because I think there's an important distinction, and maybe we can start whether we agree with that or it's just a caricaturized version of, let's say, Western society, or anything but the Quranic, let's say, society. Maybe for that specific example, we can keep the word Western there, because at least to me, it's a very core future tenet of Western civilization indeed. Maybe we can start from there, and then inshallah we can continue the 6th note. Any volunteer?
So I don't know how it is being depicted in the news or in the media, but in general, like when you look at the, let's say, life in United States, and what I mean by that is we can dissect it into smaller pieces. Life in the street in Philadelphia, life even in a nice neighborhood of Philadelphia, life in your work environment, life in your classroom. So would you consider it as a like brotherly environment, or is it like a under the hood of somewhat of a civilization? Uh, do you feel like is there a competition? Is there a everybody is sort of enemy of each other? Is it that brotherhood is the main thing, or is it the being rivals? What is at the core? What does this current society suggesting you to follow? A random person in the street, is this your, or a random person in your work environment, is this your brother, friend who is going to support you? Or you should be vigilant against this person? Which one is the first instinct that is embedded in the society? As a question. Yes.
Seems by default you expect I think this is even like more, maybe more so a cultural thing in the northeast United States. I think you can kind of expand this to sort of anywhere. You expect that somebody you don't know that you run into in any sort of public setting is going to be they're going to show indifference to you at best. And if you get in their way, or if you take a moment of their time, it's going to annoy them, frustrate them. And so it actually surprises you when like you see somebody in the street and they smile, like you pass by them, they smile, or they're kind to you, or they ask you how you're doing. You immediately like, okay, wow, now I want to reciprocate that, or you kind of take note of it. But it seems by default you expect everybody to have an indifference to the other person. You do you do your thing, go your own way, and I go my own way. But maybe in closer circles, you see that shift a little bit, like in your workplace, and everybody has an agreement. Oh, we're all working towards some goal, so maybe there's some level of camaraderie in that, but it only goes to a certain degree, and then you still have some limits of what is professionalism or whatever, and don't talk to me about your real needs. Like if you start talking to me about your real needs in life, I'm gonna get uncomfortable. Now you're crossing the boundaries of professionalism. I don't want to help you with what's going on in your family life, personal life. That's not important to me. We have a goal here, whatever it is, make this, business work, achieve these whatever goals we're supposed to be, working on. But if you talk to me about deeper things, then I'm going to get uncomfortable.
I think on the grand scale, I don't think we can escape the effect of, free market capitalism, right? The idea that competition between, different companies or people or product, whatever, will generate, I don't know, competitive prices, better products, cutting edge technology or whatever, because they're forced to compete with each other to create better and more value, etc. And I think that has a lot of implications for, just the regular person um in their day-to-day life, right? One, people have to compete for over different things, achievement. There's a lot of emphasis on achievement. Um and that sort of thing. And I think in Philadelphia, like, we face a big unemployment rate, and this could be, the jobs that are available to, you know, the people um that they're capable of, you know, fulfilling, right? Maybe there's certain jobs that are high levels, require a certain skill set and people just don't have those skill sets. But like the ones that people can fulfill, there's just not enough. And that inevitably creates some sort of a competition between those people. Some people are winners, some people are losers. And I mean, there's maybe resentment towards people that get it. and maybe feelings of superiority over the people who don't. Oh, I got it because I deserved it, or you didn't work hard enough, or this or that.
Yeah, so what do you think? Would you like to add? So what I was then, if we were to bring it to the discussion here, the author was mentioning like there's a fundamental reason that this let's say the Western worldview is leading to this sort of a competition or insincere smiles sometimes in the face. But that, like for example, let's say, I guess there's more of a Sufi story. So a sheikh, and then like you guys are the Sufis. Okay, so sheikh and his students were walking by, and then like the dogs were playing with each other, and then one of the students made a comment saying that look how beautifully they're playing, and it says throw a bone in between them and you see how what sort of a friendship is there. So like in this society also there's this, I mean, on the surface, maybe not, even this doesn't exist in Philadelphia because of the crime rate and whatnot, but in the Western society there is apparently a mutual smiling or mutual some sort of an agreement.
He's on the Utah and don't even the South. I mean, probably more West Coast. People smile like they'll smile, but that smile is insidious.
Yeah, so in Utah people smile, but it's insidious. Okay, so uh, could that be what could make it a sincere smile, and why would you think that it's an insincere smile? And if you think about the tenets of the society, so if the society is, as Atik was pointing to, is seeing the life as one dimensional, like only this world, and this world has limited resources, and we compete for these resources. I might be good friends with Fahim. Maybe Fahim is working on farming. I am working on, let's say, livestock. Our roads are not crossing, so I smile at Fahim. But what happens if tomorrow I decided to buy a land and enter into the farm business? Now we become competitors in here, and then resources are limited. We are aiming for the same thing. So he becomes my rival in this case. What sort of a brotherhood in this case that you can talk about? Because we are fighting or competing for the same thing. But if we change that perspective though and say that Fahim is being given, I am being given. We have a provider who sustains us both. We are not lending our hand on a thing and it becomes ours. No, we are just trust bearers. It's being entrusted to us for a certain period, and it's not mine. This land is not mine. This animal is not mine. But I'm taking it as a trust. Then he is taking it as a trust. What sort of a competition you can talk about in the true sense of the word competition in this case? You simply become more so of students in the classroom. And if you study, you will get A. If he studies, he will get A. Like if he studies more, it's not going to be that you will get a B because there are only limited number of A's that can be given. If you put effort, professor will give you A, will give him A too. So there's no that sort of a competition in there. Then I could be a sincere supporter of each other. This is why in the second framework, like Quranic framework, then you are like there's an afterlife, first of all. The tool set here, like the land, animal, livestock, and whatnot, is just a tool to teach you something that you will carry to afterlife. And in this classroom environment, you can support each other because your teacher are the same, like teacher creator in this sense, supporting you and saying that I give you sustenance, I create you, I make you, you exist because of me. So we are not really becoming independent entities on ourselves. So this is why inherently Quranic worldview leads to true brotherhood, and the uh, secular worldview, which detaches existence from the creator and assumes that things just happen to be, inherently has this idea of rivalry. And not only among people, human is a rival of everything else now. A virus is your enemy, a earthquake is your enemy, rain is your enemy, your friend and also enemy at the same time, because if it's going over the board, you can get drowned and whatnot. So in this world you find yourself in. So this is why when the author makes this distinction, says that even if you see an apparent peace, under the hood of this apparent peace, you will see a terror within those cities he mentions. I don't know if it was here or elsewhere, but he says there is an apparent like peacefulness, happiness, because if you go and check what are the happiest countries, what some Scandinavian countries would be the topmost, and people would say, no, we are happier here, right? So what sort of a happiness we are talking about? Is it possible to be happy with such rivalry? So I think this is
the problem. Life expectations, they are the best. Yeah. Oh, I didn't want to mean to interrupt you. Sorry. There's a comment from Zarar. I watched a TED talk a long time ago, he says. Astaghfirullah, he's wasting his time with fictional.
That's long time.
Okay, a long time ago. Okay, okay. Sorry? Oh, it doesn't matter if it is TED talk. It's like a fictional. There are some other words I would use if that was not streaming. About how a purely capitalistic society is psychopathic. So, how a purely capitalistic society is psychopathic society, or something along those lines. There's a quote that stuck with me, and then he cites the quote: capitalism at its most ruthless rewards psychopathic behavior, the lack of empathy, the glibness, cunning, manipulative. In fact, capitalism, perhaps at its most remorseless, is a physical manifestation of psychopathy, he says. He throws all these the belittling adjectives for capitalism.
So shall we go with communism? Is this very good discussion?
That's a good question. What do you suggest, Zarar? Like, should we have non-capitalist economies? What is the point? If you like to expand it, elaborate it, please go ahead. And you don't have to do it like in the moment. Take your time and you can raise your hand or just speak. Yeah, just watch another TED talk, they say. Okay. So that's actually a good point, because like when we give a name like capitalism and then start talk about it, it's kind of externalizing, like it's not me, it's not us, but those capitalists. The same goes with the Western society, right? Obviously, he's not talking about ethics, culture. And look at his, I don't know, sorry?
Attire?
Yeah, attire is definitely not part of Western culture. So he would say, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So he would say, oh, he's not talking about me, so I can make all these funny comments about this Western culture, right, freely. But we should also don't forget this text is written for us, not for gossiping about the certain cultures. And maybe if we take it as not as a society with a certain boundary and so on, or membership, but as an attitude. Then we realize that we, most of the times, if not all the time, we find ourselves as well having similar attitudes sometimes. Like when it comes to worldly life, we sometimes see in ourselves that, oh, I mean, it's not against fiqh, so why should I, share my, distribute my share? I will keep it to myself. And of course, you can do it. I mean, let's say if you are just talking about it from fiqh perspective, and if it is not against a ruling, let's say, we usually take it as a justification for our love of this worldly life, and also our justification for our love for competition. So what I mean with that, so to me, the most important thing, let's say, the most important thing, not the only important thing, but the most important thing is not what you do as an action, but the reasons that you do perform these actions, the intentions. As the first, the hadith of Bukhari says, right? The actions are based on, or according to, the niyyah, the intentions. So when we look at this quote unquote Western society or capitalist worldview, let's say, so I think we should see that these actions are the most logical actions if you have a certain, like this type of worldview. Like what I mean with this, so if you are left alone in this world, if this is your reality, you were born from your mother, so your mom gave birth to you, and then it was, this biological process of some germ cells, and you were lucky that out of these million germ cells that you happen to be, so you were lucky to born, and then you survive against all these illnesses, deficiencies, and so on and so forth. So you are so lucky, so you have to be strong, and so on and so forth. If this is your worldview, that there's no such thing as creator, there's no such thing as someone is guiding me, everything around me is created for me so that I will be educated, and so on, there's no Rab. If this is the worldview, the most logical thing is to compete. And the most logical and understandable thing is to try to protect your share and try to maximize it to some limit. I mean, you don't have to be, like a monster, right? You don't have to steal from others as well. You can just say that this is my share and I will try to maximize it so that it will be enough for me and my children and maybe their children. I'm not a monster. I'm just trying to maximize our share. And to me, this is the most logical thing you can do within such a world. If you are just left alone, everybody for himself, herself, and so on. It's like, the Darwinism at every level, biological, social, psychological. And so it's not about the critic. It shouldn't be about the critics of these actions that I'm trying to maximize my share. Because if I do that, somebody else come and say that, oh, do you know what, Birkan? Accumulation of wealth, it's not forbidden in Islam, and probably it's not. I mean, to some certain degree, right? And so what they are doing is right. I will do it as well. And if it just stick to the actions and so on. The competition as well, you can say that, I'm not harming anyone else. I'm just trying to get the best for myself. And I say, Alhamdulillah, if I get it. So you can make it more Islamic. and so on. But again, the question I think is why you are doing this. So if as a Muslim, you are as well afraid that if I don't get my share, if I don't try to maximize it, I will die. Because I have to, provide myself, I have to provide my child, and so on. If you believe that it's not your Lord that's providing, and when He provides, He's providing from infinitely, a big treasure, and there's no end to it. There's no such thing as finite resources when it comes to your Rabb, and He can provide you even out of nothing. You like walking on the street and something happens, you find your risk for that day. If this is not what you believe deep inside, then you will find yourself competing with others as well. So just being a Muslim, calling yourself a Muslim, or even being a Muslim, let's not, talking about the people who claim to be Muslim but not. No. Like you sincerely think you are a Muslim and so on, but somehow you are not convinced that it is your Rabb, Lord, that's sustaining you, but rather you think you have to sustain yourself. If this is the case, I think this competition or being on throat of each other will follow naturally. So it's not about some other people. That's what I'm trying to say. It's about a worldview. It's about an attitude that we all can find ourselves in. Especially living in this society, all our examples are competing to each other. And in my workplace, everybody competing. Even the most friendly people, they are very friendly. They will help you to the extent you are not stepping into their, the territory. If you do, you will, see the response. For them, this is logical because they don't have anything else. This is their quote unquote hell that they have to live inside. Everybody is attacking each other, right? Well, for me, let's say, if I call myself as Muslim, I see all these examples and I convince myself saying that this is the rule of the game. And if I want to be successful in academia or in industry, whatever your profession is, I have to do the same thing. And then I will start, once I'm convinced with that, then I will start like make it Islamicizing my decision, actions, right? I will say, no, I'm just trying to be best in this work because the Muslim should be the best and so on and so forth. I will put some justification. But the real reason is that I'm convinced that this is the rule of game. Quran says otherwise. Quran says, no, the rule of the game is mercy. The rule of the game is sustenance from your sustainer. This is the rule. You are given sustenance out of mercy. Rahmah, right? Rahmah. This is the rule of the game, Quran says, but I'm convinced otherwise. I have to compete. I have to strategize. So, sorry, I spoke too much, but what I'm just trying to say is not about other people. It's about a worldview that we all can share. Please go ahead and then I will read Muhammad Qadir Haidar Shahad's column.
Inshallah. So there is, this even gets reflected in the war as well. If we go to the wars that the messenger did, there's this. So Imam Ali was in the battlefield, and he was fighting with the person, and so he put the person, like, it was whatever, let's say a fierce fight, but then he pushes the person. The person is now on the floor, and he's about to kill him, and then the person spits to his face, and then Imam Ali stops and doesn't kill the person. And then the person says, "Why didn't you kill me? Because I was just trying to make you angrier so that you finish me quicker, and because I'm already not in a good condition, finish it early." He says, "When you spit to me, now it became a personal issue to me. I had this desire to kill you because you are insulting me. Now that my sincerity got damaged, I didn't want to do that." So then the person says, "Oh, is your faith such pure?" So the main point here is, even in the case of the battlefield, is it that I am taking a revenge of something, or that person, like, what is even the motivation for that fight? Because you're killing a person. Elsewhere, interestingly, another verse in Quran talks about qisas, which is the what's the English word for qisas? No, no, not. It's retaliation. Is it retaliation, or not exactly retaliation, but somebody compensation. Quran uses the term, in compensation there is life, which is apparently contradictory. Like in killing there is life, sort of a word. Like in war, likewise, what sort of a life in there? Because by killing, what are you trying to achieve? So it again all boils down to, because everybody is fighting. Like a person, from a believer point of view, in the history, Musa alayhi salam and his people fought. Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, they fought. Like they led armies. So prophets and their followers fought. Muhammad alayhi salam and his followers fought. But also today, and for the past 2 centuries, we have seen big amounts of senseless killings by secular governments too. There's fight as well. So what is, even when it comes to prophetic fight, what is the point? Is it like taking revenge in the worldly sense of fighting? Or there is an afterlife aspect. There is the aspect of sustainership, mercy, as Birkan was mentioning, even when it comes to fight. And this Imam Ali's example is a good example in this sense. So somebody's spitting to your face and you're saying that, well, now I shouldn't kill, because now it starts becoming personal. Now the idea of revenge is kicking in. So this was not the motivation for me. So what was the motivation in the first place? So it must be that those people who were attacking us, or maybe they were oppressing their own people to prevent them from the truth reaching to them. This is why I am putting my life at stake to remove this ruling people in there, so that the message can arrive to those people. Such a thing would be a legitimate reason. But if I take it as, no, we need to own more lands, then this starts changing the color of things. We need to expand the land of Islamic State, let's say. This sounds very similar to, we need to expand the land of, I don't know, my country. What is the point? So this is why, as Birkan was mentioning, let's look to the motivation. What is the motivation that leads to that action? And from our position, we can go back and reinterpret why Prophet was fighting with our own lens today. Because even in the second, third centuries, right after the Prophet ﷺ, when Prophet's life was being written, so the battles that the Prophet had was reinterpreted according to the ruling government's worldview. How Quranic was the ruling government's worldview at the second, third century, for example? We need to ask that question to ourselves. that king at that time, it might be an Umayyad or Abbasid caliph, later on Turkish caliphs and whatnot. They had their own intentions for expanding, but how much of that expansion, for example, was aligned with why Prophet was having that battle? And I'm specifically raising the topic about battle because this is the most rivalous thing that we can mention from Prophet's life. It was there, but was it a self-sacrifice at the when it was observed at the Prophet? So why are you putting your life at the battlefield? For what end? Is it to gain a land? Is it to expand your territory of rulership? Or is it for conveying the message? Because when Prophet died, he didn't have a luxury house or anything of that sort. Like the war didn't benefit him at all. Later on, and it didn't benefit the four caliph either. They were living very simple lives. But when it started to become palaces of kings, then the color of things are changing.
Alhamdulillah. And maybe on this similar line, when like we see that in Prophet ﷺ's life, he saw everybody, even the so-called enemies, as those who need to be saved. And he was upset, he was sad that they were not saved, and he was trying to save them, not be, fighting them. And we see that all these quote unquote wars are there when there's a clear obstacle between the message and people that needs to be saved. So I'm trying to deliver a message, let's say, to Fahim. And then Fahim and you will be obstacle. That's the reason I'm looking at you. And Sihal is preventing me doing so. This is the only, let's say, the legitimate reason for me to get into a fight with you, Sia.
And this, like for example, today, if Sial is an abusive father, abusing his child, and Fahim is a police, Fahim will, this is how the law in this country is, right? So you will get into his house and take the child away from the abusive father. And this is not called oppression or trying to
Barbaric.
Break into his house and steal his child. I mean, there's a good way of doing this. Of course, this could be abused. Like it could be that Sial is a good person, has his children and whatnot, but Fahim is an oppressor, and then saying that we are going to neutralize Sial's children because Sial is indoctrinating them with certain worldview and whatnot. We will steal them away, which is also being done nowadays, right? In certain countries.
Here, people were talking about. We can talk later. Go.
Go out?
Go.
Okay, go on. Oh yeah, I was worried. So then this is why, for example, America is delivering democracy to everywhere. So there are good examples and bad examples of that, because America taking democracy to oil-rich countries is another issue. But to the extent that I understand and am convinced about truthfulness of messenger and messengerhood and his message, and then understand and am convinced to the extent that I am convinced Muhammad والسلام, must be that messenger, then I would interpret his battles accordingly. But there could be a person who claims to be a prophet and then tries to do the same things, then that person would be a charlatan, and what he does would be the exact opposite of that purpose. So it really depends. This is why even today people are using this as an excuse of goodwill, or we are bringing democracy there, or like in China, people are being put in concentration camps, like the Muslim minorities, right? and then their children are being taken away from these families, and on the pretext that, oh, these are being indoctrinated and we are going to free their minds and whatnot. So there are political agenda behind things and whatnot. But when it comes to messenger's message and how serious he was, to the extent I am convinced about truthfulness of that message, I would then say that this person is really putting his life at stake for the people that are being oppressed by those people that he fights with.
Otherwise, spreading Islam with sword, we don't see it in Prophet's time or for Caliphate following him. I mean, although it is being narrated as this, but anyway, the most of the history is written by the following generations who were kings. They were just legitimizing their own actions. There's one comment from Qadir. When I look at the Western lifestyle or capitalist society, he says, there's an ease of life that I see in it, such as that the amount of work you put in, you will be rewarded. Like if you work hard, you will earn more. Or, if you have clever ideas and you work really hard, you will start your own company and you will get rich and so on. Like as if there is a relationship between a good correlation between the amount of work you put in and the gain you get out of it. He said, and he says, it sounds like a good bargain. It sounds like a good thing, don't you think? He says. Any comments about that? I mean, yes, maybe it is good.
I think the term he's describing is a meritocracy, a society where, the people who do good things, people are rewarded for, their efforts and their production and stuff like that. It seems fair, right? You do something good, you're rewarded. You do something bad, you're, given punishment maybe. And it's in, proportion to the amount that you do it, right? That seems fair. But is it truly, an equal? I guess it assumes everyone is equal in what they, as a starting point, right? That it's only a choice. You just have to choose to work more or work harder, and then you will be given, for your efforts, you will be given a product or result or achievement. Where that's not necessarily the case. It could be, maybe Bill Gates or whatever, he had rich parents and they invested in his company or product, and then it's not just because of his hard work, right? There's other factors. Maybe Elon Musk's family came from like a diamond business in South Africa, exploiting, the indigenous people and stuff like that.
Feel like performance is something you can measure, right? Something you can put on a graph and see somebody's track record and be like, oh, this person, this amount of hours he put into this project, and these are the type of work he did. So it's something you can measure, something you can see in a person, in contrast to a person's intention or character, or why are they being nice, or why are they behaving a certain way. You can't really see that in a parent. And I guess this kind of lifestyle makes sense for somebody who only has to look his life in this world. And he has nothing to look forward to after death, and death is the end. And that type of lifestyle is perfect for him because, if I do good and if I perform well, I'll get rewarded for this, right? And that's how our life has been dictated all our life, right? Even if your parents, let's say, they teach you about Islam and how to have good intentions, how to do good things, and even smiling is, let's say, charity. but they will slap you if you fail school. Like if you come home with an F, they will, you know, put you to make sure that you don't. Yeah. And so I guess people segment their life in and out of Islamic worldview. And I guess competition is, I guess you could see it in a Islamic way. Competition exists in Islam, and competition also exists outside of Islam. The only difference is, you know, your reward is, you know, you can get rewarded in this life, and you can also get rewarded in the afterlife. But you're competing to earn the pleasure of Allah, right? You can, I guess, you know, give the last plate of food you have to somebody, expecting reward from Allah, instead of, oh, I have to feed myself, and tomorrow I have to go to work, and I have to do this. I have to energize myself. So you're still competing, and your life is like, survival is another thing, right? Let's say you think of, I guess, you know, survival of the fittest. Like when you have wealth, you have to guard it, because a rich person has a thief. There's always going to be somebody trying to take that away from you. But when you have iman, there's also somebody, you know, people out there, system out there. There's a lot of brainwashing goes on that comes and attacks you, and trying to, and the shaitan exists, and there's so many enemies and obstacles that come. So you, whatever you have to guard it. So there's a survival in that aspect too, as a Muslim. And so competition and survival, that dictates your life, either Islamically or non-Islamic. The only difference I would see here is, where are you trying to get your reward? Are you trying to get all your reward here, or there's something you're trying to save so that you can benefit in the afterlife, right?
So when we compete to get the pleasure of God, the reward from God, I think where there's a very fundamental difference between this type of competing and competing for the worldly life. Because when I compete for the reward from God, it's limitless. So when I, you know, to try work harder than you, let's say, to get good deeds, at the same time, I can pray for you. I can say that, oh God, you know, I'm really want your Jannah so hard. I will work really hard. I will work harder than, let's say, Fahim, Muhammad, and so on. But please give Fahim even a bigger, let's say, palace than myself.
Because you're adding an extra step to get a reward. So you're doing more.
No, it's not. But the intention is not, you know, I will pray for Fahim so that I will get more. But like, you want more, you want really, you know, whatever, you like a big palace, let's say, make it concrete. But at the same time, because I know that my Lord has infinitely many treasures, I can see as big palace as, or even a bigger palace for you as well. Because I know that it will not decrease from what I get, what I can get. So it's like a limitless source.
Yeah, you're not trying to put the person down.
Exactly. And you would even say that, you know, not only for me, but others as well, because your humanity, your iman, wouldn't let you be happy when you are the only one, let's say, in Jannah. So you want the same goodness for others as well. Like, it is, from one aspect, maybe it sounds like a competition, because you are trying to get more good deeds and so on. But at the same time, it's not a competition in the same way that you compete for the worldly life, because the resources are endless. No point of saying that, okay, I should get more, because otherwise what is left to me is less than what I want. You can get as much as you want, and it will not decrease what Fahim gets out of it. It's endless. So in true belief, there is no, again, the competition in the sense that we see in this worldly life.
But I guess you're not putting a person down to get your whatever you're trying to achieve. There are some scenarios that if you take that position, nobody else will get. Like, let's say when Prophet ﷺ would call people to donate for battles, and if people, let's say they volunteer, and he accumulated a fund, and it reached the max. Anybody who comes after that, they don't need that money. So that person, I guess he just rushed into doing the good deed, like, let's say, buying a well, for example, Sahabas, they bought wells. That person took that position and he took that opportunity. It was a instinctual thing and he just rushed towards it. Other people didn't get a chance. Let's say somebody was not present at that moment, he didn't get a chance. You didn't put the person down, but at the same time, you had to, jump into it, right? So,
Yep. I mean, the pleasure is there. You strive for, the pleasure of good deed. But again, the way I see it's not the same type of pleasure that you get when you compete for the worldly life. The word is maybe same, the pleasure, or we use the same word for compete. Like we say, Umar radiallahu anhu would always compete with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, right? When it comes to good deed. But at the same time, we know that this word compete is not same as Bill Gates competing with, I don't know, who? Steve Jobs. It's not the same word. It's not like a same word, but it's not the same meaning. We know that. So that's the difference I'm trying to, Because when, for instance, Umar radiallahu anhu, when he says, there are such narrations, it's always Abu Bakr that's bringing the, the most, let's say, the same wealth. Yeah. This time it will be me. But we know from the context, from his life and so on, he doesn't mean that I should get the good deed and not Abu Bakr. He says he want to experience, like I want to experience this good deed, which is, bringing the most wealth. But at the same time, he wants the same pleasure for Abu Bakr as well. So anyway.
This text was exactly about that, right? The same behavior in two worldviews. So at some point, he was also talking about protection, protecting yourself from harm. In one worldview, protecting yourself from harm is because you see everybody as enemy, and then you are trying to protect yourself from someone who is trying to attack you. In the second one, he was also mentioning a believer. A disease comes to the believer. What should believer do? Just say that, okay, whatever it is, here I am, come and take me away. Death, is this the attitude? He says, no. The believer attitude would be that, oh, calamity, he uses the word calamity. Oh, calamity, if you come to me as to test my trustworthiness of looking after what is entrusted to me, then I'm not going to give in to you, because my creator entrusted me a life and gave me the duty of look after this life, because I am being taught something by watching over my health. This is part of my education as well. And then a disease comes or a calamity comes. So from believer's perspective, is this calamity here to test my trustworthiness to the trust that I am given? If it is, then I will defend. But again, the purpose of defending against this calamity is not to say that I will overcome you, but it is saying that I know where you're coming from, oh calamity. My creator sent you to me. So I'm not seeing you as an enemy, but I am just seeing you as my creator's appointed worker who is trying to teach me something. So I'm not going to give in to you. I says, if still the believer's attitude towards the calamity is, if my creator wills you to take my life away, welcome. Here it is, take my life away. But if you're here so that my trustworthiness is being tested, I'm not going to give in to you. So still, it doesn't mean that the believer is not going to have like defending life or trying to earn livelihood. We are going through the same thing. But what is my attitude? What is my motivation? How does Quran teach me to stand or take a stand against this? How does the secular worldview asks me to take a stand against any of the same things?
Maybe one example. Oh, you have a comment? One example would be what happened during the COVID, the first, the times. So people would tell you that the virus is there as our enemy. We have to fight against it, but we will, win the battle. All the jargon that they used, the words they used were from the battlefields, right? What they would call the nurse, the hospital workers, and frontline, frontline workers. It's like the front line of the battlefield. All these terminologies used at that time, it was from a battlefield, let's say, the scenario, because they wanted to believe us that we are in a war and certain things should be mobilized by the government, by whatever. But we are in a war and we have to fight against it. So this is the secular worldview. There's an enemy, there's a clear enemy, we have to fight, and we cannot surrender. We have to overcome it. We have to protect our lives. Otherwise, this enemy will take our lives, and so on. This is a secular worldview. But at the same time, there were some scholars of Quran that were saying, the virus is there, sent by our Lord. It's there for us to learn something. In that regard, the viruses are not our enemy, but our, let's say, the company in this world, right? We have to understand how we should live with it. And we are given all these feelings and so on that we want to protect our lives because the life is precious and so on. And if an action of mine, let's say going a crowd place without a mask, seem to be against protecting this, the trust I've been given, the life, then I shouldn't do it. Not because I'm afraid of something, not because I'm fighting against something, because this virus is trying to teach me that the life is given to you is so precious. And this is my education now. I have to see how precious it is. So I should act by respecting it, let's say. Maybe at the same time, my creator is teaching me that the cleanness is good. And from that, I will get an iman, let's say, is the education. Then I act accordingly and I start cleaning myself more frequently. But my attitude, my understanding is not that I'm in a war and I'm so scared, like, oh, it can attack from here, it can attack from there, and so on. No, I'm in a classroom and there are certain classes, like lessons that I should get, and I'm eager to learn about them. So you are in a peaceful world, living together with this virus. It's accompanying you in your, the journey, but at the same time, you're putting your mask, cleaning your hands, whatever they do. So from outside, it seems like, the same actions, but no, in the inside, one is fighting in a battlefield. The other one is nothing much different than, the previous year. So that's the difference between the worldviews. And when we put it this way, we can also judge ourselves. I can ask myself where I am in this moment, for instance. Am I afraid that somebody or something will take my life away? Or I'm certain that my life is at my Lord's hand. Nothing can take my life without his, the command. But it's about learning something, not to protecting my, not a survival instinct, but trying to please my Lord. So that's the difference. There's a comment from Dua. I mean, if I read the comment directly without giving the name, you would guess that it's from Dua. But anyway, it's a response to Kadir's comment when he says capitalism is good because you get what you work for. Dua says not necessarily. No matter how hard you work, the power will always be with monopolies. It is a free market in theory, but you see huge companies that don't let any competition through because of the power they have. Capitalism rewards the rich, she says. And how is there ease? Oh, Kadir was saying that there's ease because, you work hard, you get more, and you know the rule. That's the ease, as I understand. You will always be a slave, she says. There is no respect for human life. We are just cogs in the machine. Okay. Any other comments, questions? I mean, I was hoping that we could read the 6th note. I mean, we can read it. Let me see how long it is. No, it's not that long. Maybe we can read it.
7th is short.
Just because it's shorter. Okay, let's do that. Very utilitarian.
Does utilitarian mean capitalist or communist?
No, it's about the utility. Like, I asked you the merit, like what is the value of it? You said, what value talking about? It's about the utility. 7th note. O miserable pseudo-patriot who fervently encourages Muslims to embrace this world and forcibly drives them to the European industry and progress. Oh yeah, he's talking about, oh, come on, Muslims, we have to be best industrialists, we have to be best scientists, best artists, whatever. Beware, don't let the bonds be broken that tie certain members of this nation of religion. If thus foolishly, blindly imitating and crushed underfoot, their bonds with religion are broken, those irreligious people will become as harmful for social life as fatal poison. For the apostate's conscience is completely corrupted. Apostate's conscience. Oh, okay. For the one who leaves the religion's conscience is completely corrupted and he becomes like poison in the life of society. It is because of these that, according to science of principle of religion, the apostates forfeits the right to life. Whereas if an unbeliever is a member of the protected minorities or he makes peace, he has the right to life. This is a principle of the Sharia. Yusuf tricked me into reading this, right? Last week I was talking about giving an example about Isa alayhi salam and the Jewish people. They were trying to trick him to talk against Caesar. He did not fail. I did. Furthermore, according to Hanafi school, the testimony of such an unbeliever is acceptable. He gives, the footnotes if you are interested. Whereas the testimony of someone who has strayed from the path of Sharia is rejected. Like you were believer and then you are not believer anymore, then your testimony is not accepted. For he is perfidious. I don't know what perfidious is. O miserable sinner who has deviated from Sharia, do not look at the multitude of the dissolute, dissolute, and be deceived. Do not say, most people think the same as me. For the depraved do not want to embrace depravity. They rather fall into it and cannot extricate themselves. There is no sinner who does not want to be righteous and who does not want to see his superior and chief as religious. Other than if I seek refuge with God, his conscience is corrupted through apostasy and he receives pleasure from poisoning like a snake. I didn't get the first part. Is it the translation? The words are so different than what I used to see in the English translations. Is the same translation that we keep reading in a Risale, for instance?
But your translation, your reading is different than what I have here. Slightly different.
O crazy head and corrupted heart, do you suppose that Muslims do not love the world, or they don't think about the poverty into which they have fallen, and that they are in need of admonishment, so that they do not forget their share of the world? Not that short. Oh, your supposition is false, your surmise wrong. Their greed has increased. That is the reason they are impoverished. Interesting. Because for Muslims, greed causes loss and indigence. The saying, the greedy is subject to loss and disappointment, has become proverbial. Yes, there are many things calling and driving man to the world, like his soul and its appetites and need and his senses and emotions, and the devil and the superficial enticement of the world, and false friends like you, while those who call to the hereafter, which lasts forever and to long-lasting eternal life, are few. If you are patriotic even to the tiniest degree towards this nation, and the high aspirations you brag about are not lies, you should help the few who call to eternal life. For if you silence them and help the many, you will be befriending Satan. Okay, he's talking about the people who claims to be worried about the state of the Islamic people, like nations, and saying that we are so bad in a so bad situation, we are so poor, politically very weak, and so on. We have to correct this, and so we should get richer. We should be more active in politics. We should be, I don't know, more successful, and so on and so forth. And the author says, if you're really patriotic, if you're really worried about these people, the main problem they have is not that they're getting poorer. Look at these people, they are getting away further from Jannah. So help them in this regard if you are really worried about them. There are many people like you, he says, that call people for worldly achievements, but only there are a few, a handful, who call them for hereafter. Be among them, he says. Do you suppose this nation's poverty is the result of a sort of religious asceticism? Okay, or of laziness arising from abandoning the world? You are wrong to suppose that. Do you not see that the nations dominated by Europe, such as China and Brahmins and Zoroastrians of India and the blacks of Africa, are poorer than we are? And do you not see that nothing apart from the most basic substance is left in the hands of Muslims? The rest is either stolen or seized by the European infidel tyrants or the dissemblers of Asia. What did you do to me, Yusuf? You should be certain that if your intention is forcibly driving the people of belief to degenerate civilization in this way, is the country's law and order and easy administration, you are mistaken, and you are driving them down to the wrong path. For it is more difficult to govern 100 degenerates who belief is shaken and morals corrupted than to maintain public security among them, than to govern thousands of the righteous. Thus, according to these principles, the people of Islam are not in need of being encouraged and driven to the world and to greed. Progress and public order cannot be secured in that way. They are rather in need of having their working conditions set in order, of security being established among them, and of having the principle of cooperation encouraged. And these needs can be brought about through the sacred commands of religion and fear of God and firm adherence to religion. Okay, we have 50 minutes. Yusuf, can you summarize it, please, for us? The most important parts, as you see. There are some not important parts, as I can see.
Okay. Oh no, this was 7th, right? So author in here is addressing, so let me give a brief background for why this text is written. So this is in the, let's say, 30s, around 30s in Turkey, when the Republican Revolution happened. Caliphate is abolished. The new state is a totally secular state. Pretty much a European country is being made on the Muslim land, what used to be a Muslim land. And the new mindset is saying that, oh, we have been defeated in the war because of that religion. And Muslims are just, as we have been studying for the past couple of weeks, doesn't, or encouraged not to like the world, or as a few weeks back we were reading the hadith which says this worldly life is like the dead body of an animal. I forgot the word, carcass. So it's something bad. This is what your prophet is, how depicting. This is why we are backwards. So rather, but look at the other side, the Western world. They are overpowering us with their sciences, with their industry, with everything. And it is religion what sets us back? So this is the underlying question that the author is responding here. That's why he starts by saying, oh,
But as a solution, they say we have to work for this world.
as they did.
Yes.
Let's play the game according to its rules. What made them successful will make us successful. So this is why we should work more towards the world. And since religion is the thing that sets us back, let's dump it aside and then work for the world more so that we become strong as the civilized nations. This would be the term. And the author in here is starting by saying that be careful. What you're doing is by this words that you speak, you're trying to cut the ties of these people with religion. At the end, what will be left at your hand is not even an unbeliever. This is where he started. He's saying that the Sharia has this rule: the infidel does not have the right to life. On the other hand, an unbeliever who is within a treaty is okay to live under the Islamic administration. Like Prophet had Christians and Jews under his administration. They were happily being allowed to live within the society. Their testimony was accepted in the court. So they were part of the society. But somebody who had been a believer and now gets detached from that says the condition of that person is different. But why? He gives a reason here as well. He says that person is now, the word that they used in the translation was perfidious. That word, deceitful, that's not the word. So if somebody is trying to overthrow the government or doing some spying against his own government. What's that? No, what's the name for that person? Somebody like stabbing from behind as if. Traitor. So this is the word, the traitor. So that person who is leaving the religion, and we are talking about a not the case that we were discussing in the dinner. So if, and I need to give the backstory for that too, but if the person is finding the truth by the teaching of the messenger and now abandoning the religion, then what is left behind for that person about the good qualities? This is the issue here. And in practice, like for instance, you will see that a lot if the person sees that, okay, being kind to people on the basis of what? An eternal life. An afterlife is there. Now, abandoning this, let's say by abandoning the religion of Islam, that person is abandoning all the good qualities that they gathered, because those good qualities were good because of their motivations that we have been discussing for the first session here. If I leave that worldview now, what am I going to replace it with? So that person becomes a poison for the society. This is why that person doesn't have a right to life, he says. We're saving the society from the harm of that person. Because like death penalty in the United States for certain people, why is it there? That person took away somebody's life in a unacceptable way, because they're not everybody who kills someone is being on the death row, right? But certain people are being put on death row if what they did was so unacceptable towards society, towards human life. They say this person shouldn't live, and this is something in the United States as well, right? So why is there death penalty? Because that person is a poison to the society and is worthy to be killed. So now the author's point in there is, if a person leaves the religion, and this is what you're attempting to do, he says, for the questioner. You're trying to cut the ties of people with their belief, but this is a Muslim people we are talking about. If you cut the ties, those people will then become those poisonous society. And with that society, forget about making any progress. You're just putting yourself into a huge trouble. It's not going to be like a Western country, an unbeliever country. It's going to become like a group of infidels that doesn't have any truth, any order within themselves. How are you planning to even rule them? That's why he made the comment saying that it's easier to rule 1,000 God conscious people than ruling 10 apostate, meaning people who doesn't accept any rule, any truth, valueless people. So this is how he started. Brother Bikan, I think I did the half of it, which was the harder part.
The more important part is to me, like going back to Qadir and maybe Dua's comments. Author says, like the rule is not implicitly say, at least, says that the rule is not that if you work really hard for this world, you will gain. But rather he says we getting poorer because our attachment to world is increasing. And our attachment to religion is getting weaker. And instead of getting richer and richer, we are getting poorer. Because as if, that's my understanding, that we are betraying a value that we have. And God says, if you are betraying what I've given to you, right, I have to teach you that you are on the wrong path. And the word greed. Greed, yes. So when we have greed to the world, not always we get richer. So it depends on what kind of lesson we should get out of it. Because we shouldn't read what we experience in the name of this secular worldview, that you work harder, you have a clever idea, you make good investments, and so on and so forth. No. This life is for your training. Whatever is required for your training, the understanding that you are on the right path or the wrong path, this will be given to you. And if you become greedy and attached more, have stronger attachments to this world, the Muslim countries, Muslim people get poorer, he says. So if you want them become better, reestablish their attachment to the religion. And what he says at the last paragraph is very important as well. If you want to, he says, establish progress and public order, then what you should be doing is have their working conditions set in order. How would you, like, what is the original, when you said this before to me in Turkish, it makes sense. In Turkish, in English, that hard to it's not easy to understand. Yes, having their working conditions set in order. It's like, make the working life, the situation and the timing and so on, have an order there. Like make sure people work, as much as they should be working. And then security being established among them. They trust each other. Like there's a system in which you are encouraged to work, and there's a trust between people, and then having the principle of cooperation encouraged. If you establish these three, he says, then you will help Muslim people to, let's say, better in this world as well. But what is the opposite? The Western or secular worldview is that we will have a system that we will encourage people to work, even exploit them, drive them crazy, working so hard, losing all balance between life and work, and then establish competition among them, not trust. Everybody will compete to each other so that they will reach the finishing line before the others. And then principle of cooperation kind of replaced with and the competition, but also this collaborations maybe. Like you have your territory, I have my territory, and sometimes we come together to become bigger, but it's still my territory and your territory. It's not that a territory that we share and we try to clean it or try to make it better together, but rather your territory, my territory, and the division between the two. So it says, no, this is not what you should be doing. You should be establishing trust between people. You should be establishing the cooperation between people. If you really want goodness for Muslim people, he's saying.
So the trader is basically saying we want progress, we want material success. The way that we get it is we imitate the people that we see as having it. I think it's interesting. Imam Nursi is not saying, no, you don't need that kind of success, or that success is futile, it's worthless. He's not saying that. But he's saying rather don't imitate the people. That's not going to work for us. Don't imitate the people that have it. That's not going to work for us. Instead, rely on basically the Sharia, rely on cooperation, the ideals that we have, the values that we have from Islam. So how do you see Imam Nursi explaining that sort of assumption that most people will have is you want success, follow the people of success, imitate them. You follow the path that worked for somebody else, that has to work for you. How is he responding to that without saying, that success is useless in itself? Rather, he's saying that success actually we can gain, but we have to do it a different way. So how does he explain why do we have to do it a different way? Why do we know it's going to work a different way for us? And why does it have to work a different way for us?
Oh, I think it's a good question. In the like from the first point of view, it's more like, should we really be strong and whatnot? If you think about being poor versus rich, and again, the background that this text was written is when the colonization was happening. It's the very intense period of how colonization of pretty much all Muslim countries. So West was getting richer, Europe was getting rich, but then all the Muslim countries were occupied by British, Italian, French, and whatnot. And so those countries, the Muslim countries, were getting poorer, and Europe was becoming Europe that it is today. So, and nobody wants to be poor. So in this case, I guess the question is, we don't want to be poor. People have this instinct, and we want to be rich. Okay, yes, let's get rich. But how are you going to get rich? Would you like to be rich like that through the path that they went? So he says this is impossible because of the reasons that he mentioned. But yes, your question is also good in the sense that shall we be rich like them? That's not the point either. He doesn't address this here, or at least on the surface, I don't see that he's addressing that. But if we adhere to Quranic worldview as it has been explained in the previous notes as well, like even being rich is going to have a different interpretation meaning for me. I'm going to put a different value to being richer or stronger than how the Europe or the Western civilization is putting a value in it. But what I'm seeing mainly in this text is, as you also mentioned, it's impossible to reach that happiness that you are striving for by copying what the West did with the people that you have here. And he mentioned two reasons for that. One of them is do not cut the ties of these people with religion. If you do so, you will end up having people that has no value, that has no morals, and you cannot even rule them. What are you going to do with this group of people who doesn't have any value? This was number one. Number two, he talked about greed, and he said that if you like the believers, like the Muslims, are becoming greedy, and this is working against them. Like for a person who is, let's say, within the secular worldview, is greedy and working harder and whatnot. But he says, if you do it, if the greed gets into a believer, then it's becoming very harmful, because greed is harming my iman. Greed is eventually, because greed means I want to get more of the worldly, which is what we have been discussing in the fifth note, saying that the Western worldview is talking about this finite resources being fought over. But for a believer's world, no such thing should exist. The greed shouldn't be there. So inherently, if greed comes in, it starts harming my belief as well. So it starts detaching me from my belief, which makes me, again, leads me towards a worldview where I do not have any values, which is dangerous. So I think this text is important in the sense that where do I take my values from? And this is generally very important, because if you learn your values from revelation from the messenger, which should be the case for human anyways. But if you get detached from that, what would be the source of your value? If I stop getting values from prophet, from revelation, and I take a stand against this, where am I going to get values from? I will cook up my own values from there on. And this will, of course, contradict with Birkan's values, will contradict with your values. So that leads to anarchism. A believer abandoning religion means, which value system am I going to adopt? I become the reference point of values. From there on, I become the reference point for the values, which means whatever I think goes, it goes. What sort of a progress do you expect from such a mindset? So that's why he is putting religion to its proper place, is what I'm saying.
And practically, I mean, look at the situation we have in these Islamic geographies. That we see that the majority is getting detached from religion, especially in countries like Turkey, right? And we see that these people becoming worse and worse morally, even compared to Western societies. Like you see that let's say well-educated, let's say American citizen, and I'm talking about, not immigrants like this poor guy. They behave much better than let's say most of the people in Turkey today, despite all these ties, historical ties with the best, the culture on the earth, the Islam, because they are getting detached from the religion, they're becoming more and more greedy towards the world. We see that their moral values also getting worse and worse, even worse than so-called secular people. We hear this a lot, right? They do all these studies in most secular countries, not like these Scandinavian, help me, Scandinavian countries. They have the best, let's say, the democracies in place, the best manners in place. And I believe them. Like when I see these people, they acting pretty well. Versus these so-called Muslim countries, when you look at them, you see the morals are so low now that the cheating is there, stealing is there, people don't trust each other, they don't smile, and so on and so forth. And I'm saying this as an insider, as a part of this, the group. And the author here is saying that this is not because they, let's say, poor or don't care about the progress in the world and so on. Just the opposite, he says. Because these people became greedy, attached to this world, not as a person, don't get me wrong, but not as a person, but as a, let's say, the group identity. They become as if, what was the word? Apostate? Again, I'm not talking about the individual people, but the culture surrounding them. Apostate, that it was previously religious, now abandoned the religion, and it became worse than a secular culture. Anyway, any concluding remarks? So what I'm saying is what he is describing here practically seem to be true. Any concluding remarks, comments? Otherwise, we can conclude here. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.